Damn storm's getting worse, Connor muttered, tightening the fur-lined hood around his face. The wind outside howled like a wounded animal, shaking the walls of his igloo. He had enough supplies to last, but nothing could shake the feeling that something was off. Then, 3 faint knocks. Connor froze. No one should be out there. Not in this storm. Not unless they had a death wish. Another knock, weaker this time. He moved, reaching for his knife as he unsealed the small entrance. The wind roared in, biting his skin like 1,000 needles. And then, he saw her. Curled in the snow, barely conscious. Skin a strange pale blue, lips trembling, glowing veins pulsing faintly beneath frostbitten skin. Eyes, huge, silver, pleading. She wasn't human. Connor's grip on the knife tightened. Help, please. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper against the storm. For a second, logic screamed at him. Close the entrance, lock her out. But something else, something deep in his gut, made him grab her arm and pull her inside. She collapsed against him, ice melting on her skin, body shivering violently. She wasn't just cold, she was dying. And that was just the beginning. Connor cursed under his breath as the icy wind lashed against his face. The girl in his arms, if she could even be called that, was trembling so violently he could feel her bones rattling. Her skin was unnaturally cold, not just from the storm, but like it was never meant to hold warmth. He laid her down on the pile of furs in the corner of his igloo and yanked off his heavy coat, wrapping it around her fragile form. Up close, he could see more details. Her skin wasn't just pale blue. It shimmered under the dim lantern light, shifting slightly, as if struggling to decide what color it wanted to be. The veins beneath it glowed faintly, pulsating like the rhythm of a slow heartbeat. Her breath hitched as her eyes fluttered open. Those silver irises locked onto him, filled with something beyond exhaustion. Fear. Desperation. Connor's instinct screamed at him to stay cautious. He had seen enough in his years to know that the unknown was rarely safe. But she was dying, and no matter what she was, he wasn't the kind of man to let someone freeze to death in front of him. You understand me? He asked, his voice low but firm. She swallowed, her throat convulsing as if the effort to speak was unbearable. Then, barely a whisper, yes, Connor exhaled, shaking his head. All right, first things first, we gotta get your core temperature up, or you're not gonna last another hour. She flinched as he reached toward her, but he wasn't about to play nice with hypothermia. He grabbed a small metal cup, poured some water from his canteen, and set it next to his lantern to warm up. Drink that when it's ready, he said, and keep the coat on. You got a name? Her lips parted, but no words came. A moment passed before she forced something out, a sound more than a word, like 2 syllables layered over each other in a way his human tongue would never replicate. Connor frowned. I'm gonna call you Blue. That work? She blinked once. Maybe in agreement. Maybe just too weak to argue. The storm raged outside, the walls of ice creaking under the pressure. He glanced at the entrance, then back at her. You out here alone? Her breathing hitched. The fear in her eyes deepened, and that told him everything he needed to know. No, she wasn't alone. Connor's grip tightened around the knife at his waist. They're coming for you, aren't they? Her head barely nodded, but it was enough. Who? He pressed. She swallowed hard, then whispered, Hunters. A chill ran down Connor's spine, and it had nothing to do with the cold. He had spent years in the military dealing with threats that most civilians couldn't even comprehend. But there was something about the way she said that word, hunters, that made his skin crawl. Something was out there in the storm, looking for her. And now, they'd find him too. Blue's body convulsed suddenly, a sharp gasp ripping from her throat. Connor barely caught her before she collapsed sideways, her breathing ragged. Her veins flickered. Faster now, like a warning light about to go out. Stay with me, he said sharply, gripping her shoulders. Her fingers dug into his wrist with surprising strength. Her lips moved, forming words that barely escaped her mouth. They'll kill you. Connor clenched his jaw. Let him try. But even as he said it, he could feel it. The air outside had changed. The storm was no longer the worst thing out there. The wind howled outside, but Connor could hear something beneath it, a low, unnatural hum. A vibration in the air, too steady to be the storm. His survival instincts kicked in, every nerve in his body on high alert. Blue trembled in his grip, her silver eyes wide with terror. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just hunting her. It was close. Connor moved fast. He grabbed his rifle from the corner of the igloo, chambered around, and adjusted the strap over his shoulder. He didn't know what kind of enemy he was dealing with, but a well-placed bullet tended to solve most problems. Blue weakly reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist. "You can't fight them." His jaw tightened. "Watch me." Her breath hitched, and she tried to sit up, but she was too weak. Her veins flickered again, the glow dimming, as if her body was struggling to hold itself together. Connor turned to the entrance, listening. The hum grew louder. Then, footsteps. Not the crunch of boots in deep snow. These were lighter, precise, almost mechanical. Shit. Connor exhaled slowly, positioning himself near the entrance, rifle raised. Blue's breathing quickened, her panic almost radiating off her in waves. "They see heat," she whispered. "They." The rest of her sentence was cut off by a sudden, sharp click from outside. Connor barely had time to react before a blinding red light cut through the storm, sweeping across the igloo like a scanner. He dove to the ground, yanking Blue with him, pressing her body against the cold floor of packed snow. The light lingered at the entrance, casting eerie shadows across the curved ice walls. Then, a voice. Mechanical. Cold. Target located. Connor didn't hesitate. He grabbed a handful of loose snow and threw it at the lantern, snuffing out the only source of heat inside the igloo. Darkness swallowed them whole. The red light flickered as the figure outside hesitated. Connor gritted his teeth. Whoever these bastards were, they weren't human, and they sure as hell weren't going to take Blue without a fight. Blue clutched his sleeve, barely able to whisper, "Run." But it was too late. The ice wall behind them exploded. Shards of frozen debris blasted across the igloo, and before Connor could react, something yanked him backward. A force, stronger than any human grip, latched onto his arm and dragged him through the snow like he weighed nothing. He twisted, firing his rifle. The muzzle flashed, the gunshot echoing across the frozen wasteland. The thing holding him staggered but didn't fall. For the first time, Connor got a good look at his attacker. It wasn't human. A towering figure, at least 7 feet tall, clad in smooth black armor that pulsed with an eerie green energy. Its face, if it had one, was hidden beneath a helmet that wrapped seamlessly around its head. No visible eyes, no mouth. Just that pulsing green glow. And behind it, more figures emerged from the storm, moving with unnatural precision. Connor didn't wait. He slammed his elbow into the hunter's arm, twisted his body, and fired again, point blank. The shot cracked through the air, and this time, the hunter staggered. That was all he needed. He yanked free, grabbed Blue, and ran. The storm swallowed them as the hunters regrouped, their glowing eyes cutting through the blizzard like searchlights. Connor didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what Blue really was. All he knew was that they had to get the hell out of there, before those things decided to stop playing with their food. Connor's breath burned in his chest as he fought through the knee-deep snow, dragging Blue with him. The blizzard was brutal, cutting visibility to almost nothing, but he didn't care. The further they got from the igloo, the better. Behind them, the hunters moved with terrifying efficiency. Their glowing eyes pierced through the snow like specters, scanning, searching. Blue stumbled, barely able to keep up. Her body was deteriorating. Connor could feel it in the way she leaned on him, her frame lighter than it should have been, as if she was fading out of existence. He had to think. Fast. There was a cave system about a mile south. He had scouted it before. If they could get there, they might stand a chance of hiding. "Stay with me," he muttered, gripping her waist tighter. "I don't carry dead weight." She let out a weak sound, halfway between a laugh and a cough. "You lie." Yeah, he did. But now wasn't the time to argue. Another flash of red light cut through the storm, sweeping dangerously close to them. Connor ducked low, pressing Blue down with him, heart hammering in his chest. Then, a voice. This is your final chance. The tone was metallic, emotionless. Return the asset. You are not our concern. Connor clenched his jaw. Return the asset? He looked down at Blue. Her eyes were dull, barely holding onto consciousness. These things didn't see her as a person, just a thing, a piece of property. Like hell he was giving her up. He shifted his grip on his rifle, scanning the wideout around them. The cave wasn't far. If they could just... A sudden explosion of movement. One of the hunters lunged through the snow, moving impossibly fast. Connor barely had time to react before it was on top of him, an armored hand clamping down on his throat and lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. His rifle clattered into the snow. The hunter's green-lit helmet stared into his face, expressionless. You are irrelevant. Then it squeezed. Black spots filled Connor's vision. He struggled, kicking against the thing's chest plate, but it was like hitting a steel wall. Blue's voice broke through the chaos, weak but desperate. Stop. For a moment, everything froze. The hunter's grip faltered. The other figures in the snow hesitated. Then Connor saw it, Blue's veins flaring, light pulsing out of her skin like a living beacon. The storm itself seemed to bend around her. The wind shifted, the snow swirling unnaturally, almost like it was responding to her presence. The hunter holding Connor twitched. Its helmet flickered, green light crackling around it. Blue's lips moved, whispering something he couldn't hear. And then, the hunter dropped him. Connor hit the ground hard, gasping for air. He rolled onto his back, just in time to see the impossible. The hunters, the same unstoppable machines that had been chasing them, were backing away. One of them, the tallest, took a single step forward, as if fighting against something unseen. This is unexpected, it said, voice distorted. Blue pushed herself up, her entire body flickering like a glitch in reality. Her silver eyes locked onto the leader. You don't own me, she whispered. The hunter tilted its head, as if considering her words. Then, in an eerie, unified motion, the entire squad turned and disappeared into the storm. Connor coughed, rubbing his sore throat. What the hell just happened? Blue swayed, her glow fading. They can't take me, if I remember what I am. And with that, she collapsed. Connor barely caught her before she hit the snow. The storm raged on, but the hunters were gone. For now. Hours later, the cave loomed before them, a dark mouth in the frozen landscape. Connor carried Blue inside, setting her down on a dry patch of rock. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He sat back, running a hand over his face. He had 1,000 questions. Who was she? What had she done to make those things back off? And why the hell did he feel like his life had just become a war he never signed up for? Blue stirred, her eyes fluttering open. You stayed, she murmured. Connor exhaled. Yeah, well, couldn't let you freeze to death after all that. A small, tired smile ghosted across her lips. Liar. He smirked despite himself. The fire crackled between them, casting shadows against the cave walls. Outside, the blizzard raged on, and somewhere in the dark, he knew the hunters were still watching, waiting. But for now, at least they had one.